Hello everyone. So today we are painting a painting called Spring Truck. I have an example here of the type of painting we're doing. Basically we have a nice aqua truck with some beautiful roses cascading down the back. And the background is as if it's planks of barnwood. So this is really a fun decoration we can use for in our homes. So the painting I am working on is an 18 by 18 canvas, but of course, as you can see, it also works on a rectangle format. So you can use any type of canvas you have at home. I would suggest if you're working on a square canvas to try to center your truck just a little bit below the center line. So you will notice that before the video, just to save a little bit of time recording, I sketched my truck in with a pencil. So you can always stop this video, look at your reference photo and take the time to sketch in the truck. Because it is an object quite linear, I did use a ruler to align the bottom and the top of my truck so it would really look quite well put together. As well, later on we will paint the lines going across to represent the barnwood. So I took my ruler and I marked where I would like my boards to be. In this case, on the 18 by 18 canvas, I did them 3¼ inches for each board. Up to you how wide you want to go. So you'll see the list of colors in the materials needed, but it's quite a variety of vibrant colors. So the first thing we're going to do is paint a gray background. So I will use black and white to make some shades of gray. I also have one pre-mixed color here. It's kind of a light gray. But use whatever you have. Taking a bit of black to the white. Always just put a small amount of black. This way it's easier to make the shade of gray you want. If you put a lot of black right away, you might have too much black, it might be too dark. So mix your black wisely. Okay, so I'm using a fairly large brush because we're going to be filling in the background. And I always like to put a little bit of water on my brush, as this is acrylic paint, so you can mix it with water just to help my paint flow and not be too thick. Because this is a barnwood background, you can have some shades of gray, black. It doesn't have to be a perfectly mixed gray. You can play with the shades. So I'll show you, I'm making kind of a smoky gray color. And I'm just mixing it quickly so it's not so perfect. So here we have our background. So as you can see, I have some nice textures in my gray already. And I find it a little bit dark, so I'm going to add a little bit more white to my paint. I always like to try to paint a bit on the edge, but after I'm done painting, I always go back and touch up my edges. It's nice to make sure that no white canvas is showing, so I like to keep my paintings looking finished. Again, if you find your paint is a bit thick, just add a small bit of water to your brush. Another thing you could do if you're painting at home, not painting on a live video, you could paint all your background and then you can paint sketch your truck on top of the background. It's up to you. So just making sure I'm happy with smooth lines left to right. And now as I approach my truck sketch, I'm going to just go around the outside. If you accidentally go within the lines, don't worry about it. It's acrylic paint. You can just let it dry and you can come back afterwards and touch up your mistakes. So I'm keeping my textures going left to right. Within the roses themselves, I'm just going to put a bit of gray because mostly it will be bright colors and green leaves, so you won't see a lot of background within the roses. Switch to a smaller brush just to get a little bit of gray around the roses that are falling off the back of the truck. So all the way to the edge. Later on, after the background dries and we're done parts of the painting, we can come back. We're going to do more texture into the barnwood using darker gray and black. This is just our first base color. All along the bumper, my fenders. In terms of drawing wheels, I just freely sketched circles, but if you're not that comfortable with doing circles, you can always use a small glass or something to trace around. Just a little trick you can do. And I always like to lift up the bottom of my canvas just to make sure I paint all along the bottom edge. Sometimes you'll get a little bubble of hard paint. I'm using an older palette, so it had some old paint on it. I just like to make sure that my background is completely covered, so I'm just making sure that I'm happy with what I see. Okay, so the background is drying. Now we are going to start painting the aqua blue color. Have a different cup variety, shades, doesn't really matter, whatever you have. So I'll go with the darker one for today. And a medium-sized brush. Oh, as a matter of fact, I'm going to fill in the gray inside the window. I skipped that part by accident. So back to my background color just to fill it in. Using a smaller brush. Here I have my steering wheel. Let's go around my steering wheel. And left to right, same as the background on the outside. Just making sure to fill it in quite nicely. Oh, small hair from my paintbrush fell off. Okay. Okay, so everything is filled in. So now to my aqua blue. Really one of my favorite colors to paint with. So now we're going to fill in our truck. This is the first coat of blue. Just going around the headlight. So I'm really meeting the edge of the gray. So I don't see any white. I see blue meets gray. And I'm using the same left to right strokes. Because this is a first coat, don't worry about it if it's not quite looking clean, because we're going to put more paint on top again later. I'm going to put some shading in within the blue as well to define the bumper and the fenders and the door, etc. So this is just to get the first coat of blue down. My bumper is going to be black as well as my tires later on. And just a bit of a smaller brush to paint the aqua blue on the hood and on the top of the truck. So I'm just making sure everything is filled in with the first layer of blue. I'm going to add some textures later, so we're just going to let this first layer dry. And now we're going to move on to doing the black tires and bumpers. So back to a smaller brush, getting some black paint. This is a small flat brush. Now if you're at home, of course, you can take a little break and let your background dry if you wish. But I'm just doing this step-by-step working to make the video as short as I can in one stage. But if I was painting, I would definitely let it dry just because I could lean my hand a bit more on it and I wouldn't get full of paint. But everyone is different when you paint. The steps involved, just do what you feel comfortable doing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're not comfortable with doing circles freehand, you can sketch your outlines using a round object. So this is pure black. back tire. So I'm working to make sure that my tires are both roughly the same size and aligned properly, because it would look kind of funny if you have one tire here and one tire below. So I did use a ruler, as I mentioned earlier, to sketch my bumper. So it was a great guideline for me to draw in my wheels. So you'll notice I have a small bit of white showing. I'm going to fill that in later on. Inside the tires, a bit of gray, using the same brush, just to show a small kind of reflection of the hubcaps. A little bit of gray and white on my brush even. Later on we will come back and touch up the dots inside the hubcaps at the top of my brush. And one back here. So it's just a smaller circle within. Okay, so back to black for my bumper, pure black, using the same brush. The bumper, and all along the base. And my front bumper. So now you can really see how the thickness is the same. It's running across the bottom. Okay. Now just a little bit of gray and black on my brush again to do my backlight. And my front light. Okay, Now I'm just going to take a little bit of a smaller brush to do my steering wheel. And the seat in the back of the truck. Okay. So as we were doing this, our aqua blue was drying a bit, so I'm going to go back and do another layer of aqua. Depending on the quality of paint you're using, if you're using it's up to you how thick you want to do the aqua blue, but in this situation we're going to do 2 layers, and you'll immediately see how the truck comes to life more with the second coat of paint. So I'm pulling from left to right. So I'm imagining my fenders here by going around my tires. I'm going to have 2 fenders defined. So this is looking good. And back to my smaller brush just to fill in the top. Get a bit more blue paint just to fill in the top section. So there we have it. Just gonna let this dry a bit. It's all a matter of working with layers. We're going to come back with some black and do some shading within 10 minutes or so. So while I'm waiting for the blue to dry a bit, I'm going to start to do the first coats of my roses. So I'm going to start by doing the red roses first. If I name a color red, pink, yellow, orange, purple, and you don't have the color, do purple roses. Do any color that you wish. So red is number 1. Okay. Just using a small round brush. So roses have a lot of texture. Using this small round brush, we will play with textures, with layers using white and red. The very first thing to do would be to do the base color of your rose. It's not always perfectly round, a flower. It can be more oval shaped, and if it's a sideways view it could be more egg shaped. So I know that this rose is one of the larger ones, and it's crossing over the sides of the truck. So a nice big red rose. This is just basic color for now. We're going to do the petals after. So I'm going to put another red rose here. You can choose where you want to put your color roses. And a little one in the back. And how about one up towards the top? Okay. Just going to keep my brush for the red aside for now. And I'm going to do some pink roses. I have a nice pre-mixed pink. Whatever shade pink you have. And if you don't have pink, you can use white and red. And sometimes a touch of yellow can make a very nice soft pink color. So a nice big pink rose here. A little one here. Let's do another small one. Some of them are touching each other, overlapped and so on. Just take a look at your reference photo. We'll do a small one here. Okay. Now I'm going to do a purple rose. I have a magenta color and I'm adding a bit of blue to the magenta. If you don't have pre-mixed purple, you can play around with red or blue. Red with a touch of blue can make some nice shades of purple. Nice dark purple. We have one big purple rose here. And I like to have some of the roses just slightly overlapping the back of the truck. Next in line, I'm going to do a dark yellow rose. So dark yellow can be used, you can have yellow with a touch of red to make kind of like a peachy dark yellow. If you want a sunflower yellow, you could have yellow with a touch of brown. It would be a sunflower. I'm going with this kind of peach color. I might even do a more sunshine yellow and some peach roses. Why not? Whatever colors you want to do, go for it. Nice sunshine yellow. Remember, this is just the first coat for the roses, so if you're seeing a bit of gray background or you're seeing some colors touching, don't worry about it too much. We're going to build up the roses later on. This is step number 1. Yep, I really like the yellow. It's bringing things to life. And one little one up here. I'll put one up here. Some of the roses are just flying off the back of the truck. Okay, so now while this is drying, we're going to go back to our truck and put in the black shading around the fenders, a little bit of black touch-ups just to bring the layers of the truck out, as well as a bit of white reflections in the truck. So we're going to basically finish our truck right now. So I'm using a round brush and I'm taking a small bit of black on my brush to the aqua to make like a grayish aqua color. So I'm just going to start to define my fenders a bit. You see that? And my truck is still a little bit like tacky, so that's okay. It helps to blend my colors. So I just want to go around the edges. This is a really fun, relaxed painting. I'm adding a bit more aqua on my brush so I don't do too much black. And you can already see what I'm doing. I am defining my fenders. You see that? So aqua and a touch of black. And if you need to do a bit more black, just to get that feeling of an antique, beat up type of truck. So it's the same thing for the outside along the edge of the truck. I have a bit more black. Then I go back and I add more blue on my brush just to blend it in. This is basically the third layer on this truck. So we have a lot of thick paint, giving it a lot of character. So I added a bit more black to my brush again. I want to add some character along the top here. And I'm not worried about having smooth paint on my truck. I like the idea that I'm getting this texture. A little bit of black again. And if you add too much black, add an extra bit of blue. Just play around with it until you're happy with the way it feels. You can see how the black and the blue really is nice. It really gives it an antique. I really like these colors. So I'm going to do this. This is going to be my final coat on the truck. Depending again on the consistency of the paint you're using, you can let it dry again. If you've accidentally put too much black, you can let it dry and go back and fix it until you're happy with how your truck looks. My back bumper, sorry, my back fender. Touch of black along the edge. Touch of black all along the back edge. Bit more aqua just to smooth it out. Now, this would be a great time to take a break. If you're not happy with some parts, again, let it dry, touch it up after. I'm happy with what I have right now. I am going to go back to work now on the roses. So we started off with the red roses. Going back to get some red. Now, a small trick to make petals on the roses. Red, round brush, touch of white, same time. Now we know that roses have smaller petals in the middle and larger ones on the outside. And again, it's pretty much the same thing as I just did onto the truck. I'm using the same brush and I'm just playing with white and red to create this feeling of a flower. So there we have, we can come back later once it dries a bit if we feel it's too white or too red. I'm just doing this to all my red roses. A little touch of white and red. It's adding a second layer to my red flower. We want this painting to really pop. It's a really fun painting. And the more layers we can put on to these bright colors, the more fun it gets. And I have another one up here. Little touch of white, just to add some texture. Now I'm going to do a little bit of white on this one too. My pink flowers. So a little bit of pink, a touch of white, and working from the center outwards. Center outwards. Okay, next color is the dark purple. Touch of white, dark purple. So you play around with this until you're happy with the way your flowers feel. Next I have my peach. A little bit of white to the peach in the middle, just to give some texture. And next I have my yellow. Touch of white. In the middle, or on the sides, nice and thick. Yellow is more transparent, so put a lot of yellow paint on your brush. Touch of white, a little bit of reflections. So there we have it, roses, flowers. If you're not comfortable with what you did, you can let it dry again. You can play around with the white and the yellow and so on, but I'm happy with what I have. So the next step, I'm going to go back to work on my barn board background. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to put in some black lines to fill in the barn board. I have a ruler. It's up to you if you want to use a ruler, but as I mentioned, I marked off 3 1/4, and I'm just going to hold my ruler roughly and paint my black lines. You can use a black Sharpie if you wish. Just make sure your background is dry. Black pen, paint pen, or simply a small brush and black paint. So let's try out with the small brush and black paint. It's a barn board, so it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And the ruler is just a slight guide for this. So there we have it. We can touch it up a bit. Black paint is always the thickest paint, so I always like to take some water on my brush. It also dries quite fast, so when it starts to get really thick, it doesn't flow, add a bit of water. Okay, so my next board, roughly here. There we go. Next board. Okay, and one last board. Perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to take my round brush and I'm going to create some wood grain textures using medium gray, light gray, a bit of white. So I already have some nice grays mixed on my palette. So we're just going to have some fun here. Textures, circles, lines, any type of brush strokes left to right. Sometimes you'll see like in little knots of wood. And play with the black, gray, white. You can see it start to come to life. My paintbrush is quite wet, so it helps me keep things flowing. See how that's coming to life. Okay, now I'm down to my next board. A little bit of white on my brush, white, gray, black, a little bit of black, black here, circular wood grain, and let's not forget the background we painted earlier inside where the steering wheel is. Add some textures in there. So you can just see how I'm playing around to make my wood grain. And once again, if you add too much black, not enough gray, same thing. Take a break, come back, look at what you've done. You can correct it with layers. That's why I love working with acrylic paint, because you really have a chance to get your painting right. Adding some highlights near the black lines as well can really make the boards kind of pop out more. So just make sure that your background is well filled in. You're not seeing any white canvas. Looking pretty good. I have a little touch up here near my wheel. Keep my wheels nice and round. And as I mentioned earlier, to add a few bolts on the hubcaps, using the back of my brush to make dots. I'm going to make 5 dots. 1, 2, 3. Five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Using a small bit of white paint, I'm just going to add in a little bit of reflections on my truck. These are just little details. Help bring a painting to life. A little bit of white reflections. Not much. Just a touch. A little bit on my front light. See how delicate a little bit of white paint can make a huge difference. A little bit of reflections on my bumpers. Even a little bit along the board. A bit of aqua blue again. White. Aqua. How that makes your fenders really stand out. Just having fun here. And I also can even take a little bit and define my doors. The door on my truck. A little black. to do the last touch, which would be the green leaves within the roses. So again, using any green paint you have, light green and dark green. If you only have dark green, you can create a light green by adding a bit of white to your dark green. And if you only have light green, you can create a light green and a bit of yellow and white to your dark green. So I have some dark green. And I'm using a round brush again. And I'm going to make my leaf. Basically just pulling lines. Pull, 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 pull. And I'm going to fill up any little white areas the leaves and I guess the corners of the roses. And by doing this, you can see already, I'm using just dark green for now, how my rose is starting to come to life. And some up here. There's some greenery hanging off the sides. And we have some cascading down the back with the roses that we added back here. I just think this is such a cute design. So this was all using my dark green. Now I'll take my lighter green. I will show you. It's a kind of a spring green. I'll add just a little bit more white too. I want to add some reflections. Same brush, same type of strokes. You can see the reflections of the leaves. And now if you feel you need to touch up any of your flowers, you can do this also. As long as you have everything covered in, you don't see any white background. A little bit of dark green, even on top again, adds texture to those leaves. And last but not least, always take the time to sign your painting in the corner. So there we have it, folks, our completed painting. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I really look forward to seeing what you come up with. So feel free to post your photos in the comments. Thanks everyone, have a good day.